I love it. I love it. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk week two. Obviously, we will be covering tonight's Baltimore versus Las Vegas game later on in the stream. So make sure to tune in and make sure to stay on the stream until then. We'll be going live for the next hour 10 minutes as we break down this week two FanDuel first look. I know Josh has taken a very, very brief look in it, but this is honestly my first time looking at the new week ahead of us. Now, this is classic overreaction week two. It happens every single season. What is up, Tim? No hitter, Tim. Thank you so much for gifting a tier 1 sub to Dirty Poker Chip. Nice. Add one to the list too. That's awesome. No, you're not effing the stream at all. Appreciate it. You're just blasting my left ear where I get all the sub notices. So yeah, that was a good one. Thank you, sir. All right. Got a lot of new guys in the chat today. Anyway, it's week two overreaction. It's a classic thing that happens every single season, Josh. And so we'll look through here. I see right away, that Christian McCaffrey's price went down. And I think a lot of that has to do with New Orleans defense. We saw them. They actually looked really good against Green Bay yesterday. We normally don't target running backs against this New Orleans defense, but Christian McCaffrey has had some success against them. So that's the first thing that I want to talk about as we look and break down this week two slate. Obviously, it's not going to show last year's stats, but I know in historics that Christian McCaffrey has done well with the usage. Let's actually bring that back up here because I want to note something and touch on something. You guys see this little mark here? Look at this. 9 targets, 9 receptions, 89 receiving yards from Sam Darnold. So Christian McCaffrey got there without even scoring a touchdown, and I think that's a huge sign of relief for many Christian McCaffrey owners. How do you view what Christian did yesterday? How do you view what that offense did? And normally we don't target the running backs against the Jets either, so this should be a pretty similar kind of thing that we talk about this week.
Yeah, just the fact that CMC is back is good to see. And I think this is a tough matchup, but I think this might be a matchup that you still want to take advantage of. I think that with him catching so many passes and him getting so many targets that it's kind of hard to ignore at this point. And like you said, it's really impressive that he ended up paying off that price tag even without a touchdown. So imagine if he adds in a touchdown or two. I mean, the ceiling for this guy could be absolutely insane. I feel like at a 10K, you're still underpricing him in all honesty. Yep. So like it could be to a spot where like Christian McCaffrey by the end of the season could be in like the 11K, 11.5 range. And that's when maybe you can consider fading. But right now at 10K, I think you should take advantage of this price tag.
Yeah, I mean, look, they gave him 30 touches, and I know it was a competitive game, and I know that they actually underperformed in terms of their team total and the scoring. Did not put up 20 real life points in this spot against the Jets, which is kind of surprising to say the least. But I think Darnold feels very comfortable in this system, and I will say to one point, I think that we're actually getting, yesterday was kind of a fluky performance for McCaffrey in the fact that he actually fumbled a goal line toss that was given to him. So he could have gotten in the end zone on that play. He might not have, but he was given some attempts there, and I think that those actually turned into touchdowns moving forward. So that's the first thing that sticks out to me. So what we're going to do now, guys, is we're going to go position by position really quick and just break down what we see from a FanDuel perspective. Again, I have now looked at this. This is the first time that I've looked at this slate, and we'll go ahead and get to it. So right now, first look at this, they did not shy away from bumping some of these QBs up in price tags. Russell Wilson stands out to me right away, 8,500 against this terrible Tennessee defense that the Arizona Cardinals absolutely torched. They can't seem to stop mobile quarterbacks, as we saw by Kyler Murray's performance yesterday with 5 total touchdowns. Josh, what do you see here at the top? I think that Tom Brady also looks interesting at 8,200 against Atlanta.
Yeah, I don't think the Tom Brady price tag looks awful in any regard. I will say that I don't believe in Atlanta's offense, at least from what I saw on Sunday. So I don't know how much I'd be interested, considering I think it would end up turning into a blowout. Sure. Honestly, I really like the Kyler price here at 8,700. We saw him absolutely torch in week 1. That was against Tennessee. But we also saw Burrow torch against this Minnesota team. And it's important to remember that this Minnesota team doesn't have a good secondary. Like, they have Patrick Peterson, who used to be a good secondary and might have been a good secondary like 4 or 5 years ago, but isn't to that same same regard right now. So I think Kyler could be in for an absolutely amazing week. I could easily see myself going back to the well with Kyler Murray. I really liked him yesterday. I told you before we got the news about Zach Moss that it was between two guys. It was between Jalen and Kyler for me. And so I think I could very easily go back to the well here with Kyler and feel really good about it.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great play. I think that paying up in this spot is fine. He's definitely not overpriced. I don't think he's underpriced either. I think it's a pretty good sweet spot for Kyler Murray. The 5 rushing attempts is interesting. I think it's just because they probably just didn't have to. He didn't need to. Like he just wasn't getting any pressure. So yeah, I think that's fine. The passing attempts thing is also kind of weird. I thought he'd be a little bit higher up, but again, they scored so many points that it didn't matter at the end of the day. So I think that he's totally fine. And obviously, the main thing that we want on FanDuel are these touchdowns. So 5 total touchdowns from a guy at this price is just fine. Like he's not going to get 5 touchdowns every game, but I think that with the combined rushing yards that he has, we've seen it before. I don't think he's going to have less than 20 rushing yards maybe ever again this season. Like that's how good this guy is. So with that,
it's kind of insane to see that like that was the floor for his rushing attempts, right? Like I don't think you'll see any game this season where he doesn't run with the ball 8 times or more, and we saw 5 on Sunday. So like I think you're just skimming the surface of what Kyler Murray can really do. And I don't know if you watched the game, but like the one rushing touchdown that he did have, he looks better than ever when it comes to running the ball. Dude has wheels. Like he was so confident in himself too. And it has to be said that like being confident in your play and in your running as a quarterback is extremely important. So like if he's able to get more rushes off, I just feel like I like him even more.
Absolutely. Yep. That rushing touchdown was impressive. DeAndre Hopkins looked amazing as well. I think this team can now finally click, and we saw a lot of those weapons go off. And, the entire offense looked great. So, yeah, I think that looking towards targeting the Minnesota defense and targeting the Titans defense until they figure things out is definitely things that we should note and look at. What's up? What's up, Kai? What's up, Mike? What's up, Black Eddie? Bears hockey, Murray and D-Hop, and figure out the rest. Yeah, we'll get to D-Hop here in a sec. John wants to know if Herbert's underpriced. So let's scroll down here and talk about him as we talk about the next couple of guys on the slate. Josh Allen taking on Miami, another tough defensive team that he has to go up against. So his price went down a little bit from what it was the other day. I'm interested to see how that goes. Dak Prescott, another impressive performance against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So if he was able to do that against Tampa Bay, what is he going to be able to do against the LA Chargers, who looked pretty good yesterday? Again, here we have Jalen Hurts at 78. We'll talk about him. Getting to the Herbert question, 76 seems a little bit too low. He doesn't have the rushing upside nearly as the other guys do. Obviously these are probably scramble numbers, and he did lose a fumble and threw a pick yesterday. But again, tough defense, not going to bang on that at all. The 47 passing attempts is also pretty insane. So first look tells me that Justin Herbert's certainly in play for tournaments, although I probably won't consider him for cash. Josh, thoughts on Herbert, and then I'll let you take the floor with Jalen Hurts here.
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about Hurts for a little bit. I definitely don't mind the price tag on Herbert. I think for me personally, it'd be a wait and see approach in GPPs, just because we did see that Dallas defense play pretty well last week, and I'd be interested to see what they can do with a full 10 days of rest, right? Because they played last Thursday. This Chargers team, I almost called them the Clippers. That should tell you how close we are to basketball season. This Chargers team is they're coming off 7 days of rest, so it'll be interesting to see if maybe that helps this Dallas team even more. But I think I'd stay away from the Herbert play, especially because we have one of my favorite early on GPP plays on the whole entire slate at 7,800 in Jalen Hurts. I think this price tag is super reasonable. I thought that after what I saw from yesterday's game, you could possibly see him at the 8K range, if not more. He just looked so good yesterday. I can't rave enough about how good Jalen Hurts looked for this Eagles team. He looked good when he was running the ball. He did have that one fumble, but honestly, it was fine. He had 3 passing touchdowns. The big thing last year was like, is this guy accurate enough to play at the NFL level? Yesterday, he proved it to us. Yeah, he's 100% accurate enough to play at the NFL level, especially because he ended up almost having an 80% completion rate. Last season, he had a 53% completion rate. you got to remember that this Niners team, while they are scary, they had a lot of problems with rushing, with QBs that had scramble abilities.
Yeah.
They had a lot of problems with yesterday. They have a terrible, the linebackers do a terrible job of containing. So do the defensive linemen. And I think that this secondary is going to look bad for a little bit until they find an option to replace Jason Verrett, who ended up going out to an ACL injury and is going to be out for the whole season. It's going to be really hard for this team to stop the passing game of most teams. So that's why you saw Goff kind of go off at the end of yesterday's game. I think there was multiple reasons for that, but that's one of them. And I think Hurts could be in for a game, man. I think he could be in for an absolutely amazing game at this price tag. And the thing is, you don't need him to outscore anyone in that 8-7, 8-5 range like Wilson or Murray. You just need them. You need him to get close to them, and that's exactly what he did this past Sunday. That's what I think he'll do again this Sunday.
Right, exactly. Little Italy, what's up, dude? What's up? Good afternoon. How's everyone doing today? Yeah, Tim said, no hitter said, you're good. The Chargers are the Clippers of the AFC West. The accuracy.
The accuracy, exactly.
Yeah. So the thing I'll say about Hurts is that the biggest concern that I had was how does the rest of this team's weapons look? We saw Sanders at a really, really good bounce back game. Very excited for him. And then we saw both Devontae Smith and Jalen Reagor, even the tight ends. They all looked great. Now, is that Atlanta's defense? Possibly. But I think that we'll continue to learn more information. But for right now, Jalen Hurts is definitely one of the top options for me as well, looking at this for the first time. So
not only did Sanders look good too, I think that Kenneth Gainwell was one of the more impressive rookie backs on the whole first week of slates. Like,
for sure,
Kenneth Gainwell looks solid. I'm a little bit biased because I have him on a few fantasy teams, and I got him really late in dynasty drafts. But I think that Gainwell looked really impressive.
Agreed. Dan the Blue, what's going on? Good morning, sir. Your Rams looked good last night. We're going to be talking the Monday Night Football game a little bit after this Week 2 preview, so make sure to stick around for that. I know you will. All right, let's look down the list here a little bit. We do have a matchup, which should be a really good game between the Rams and the Colts. Colts defense, Josh, did not look good the other day. I think that's something to keep in mind here because we did mention, or a person in the chat, Giannis said that the Rams pricing is atrociously low. So that's something to keep in mind as we go position by position here. Anybody stand out from a pricing perspective down here, down in the 7 range? It's not normally a place I look for cash games on FanDuel specifically, but anything that stands out to you down here is you got Joe Burrow at 7,100. You also have Teddy at 7K against Jacksonville.
Yeah, you took my guy here. I think Teddy Bridgewater price tag does kind of look enticing at 7K here. I mean, we saw he looked pretty good. It was the Giants defense. I don't know what to think about that. The fact that he looked good against the Giants defense, it'll be interesting to see where that Giants team places throughout the rest of the season. But they're clearly willing to trust him, right? He had 36 pass attempts, had 264 yards, even ran the ball 3 times. I think against this Houston defense, you're going to see, or against this Jacksonville defense, sorry, we saw that Tyrod Taylor was able to light it up. Like, if Tyrod Taylor's able to light you up, who knows who else is going to be able to light you up throughout the league. So I think Teddy has to be in play at this 7K price tag, and he's the guy at the bottom here that sticks out the most to me.
100% agreed. Yeah, Dan, Rams looked amazing. They did. I mean, their offense is just very good. Like, they have a lot of really good pieces that mesh well with Stafford's style of play, and they ran the ball effectively, did their job, made a Bears team with Akeem Hicks look like like just steamrolled them last night. So very, very good news for the Rams. Moving down the list here, we don't have much more to talk about. Any interest moving forward with what we saw from the Texans? I know that they put a whooping on the Jaguars, but is that the Jaguars defense or the Houston offense? I think I lean toward the prior.
Yeah, I think I lean toward the prior too. Yeah, I lean towards the prior. I think that you're going to see him struggle a little bit here, so I definitely lean towards the prior.
Yeah, a lot of these quarterbacks that had pretty good performances for this price range have really, really tough defensive matchups. Sam against New Orleans, no thanks. Carson against the Rams, no thanks. Ryan, I think this is a streamer spot for the Bucs defense. I'm interested to see if they are less than 5,000 on this slate. Tua against Buffalo, tough matchup. Jimmy G against Philly. I mean, that's an interesting spot, right? I mean, I don't know. Like we talked about this on the morning show, but I think as the weeks go on here, we're going to see your boy Trey Lance come in for specific packages, which immediately lowers Jimmy G's upside. Not that he really had any to begin with.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like he's always going to be this game manager type of QB, and so did Jimmy ever have any upside to begin with? I don't think he did. And especially now that they're going to bring Trey Lance into those packages, we even saw Trey Lance steal a passing touchdown from him. So like,
Yep.
I just think that it's extremely hard to trust anyone under 7K. I think almost all of these QBs, it's rough sledding, right, up and down the lineup. So I don't think I'm considering anyone down here.
What about what could I make an exception to the rule here? Andy
Go
Dalton,
for it.
and possibly his last start as a Bear,
Oh Lord.
gets the Bengals.
Oh, a little bit. Okay. Okay. Maybe I can get behind the revenge narrative here. Just maybe. I still don't know how
It's
excited I
gross.
am about. It's very gross. It's very very gross. So, I don't know. We'll see. I
Yeah.
think it's not the worst option. I think I'd still like. What is his price tag at? Oh, it's 6,500. Yeah, I was about to say like I'd rather get up to Teddy, but that 500. I mean that's the difference between. Let's go to the running back position. That 500 is the difference between I don't know. There's a few guys. Henry and Chubb, I guess, would be the first one that jumps off the page to me, but we'll get to running back soon.
Yeah, I think it's time to move over. The last thing I'll say about Dalton is that we'll talk about his price tag on DraftKings because I'm sure that's probably going to be super cheap. A very good matchup, but again, like I don't know. I mean, Dalton looked terrific against the Rams last night. We knew that was going to happen, so that's why we completely faded him, and the rest of the field didn't. So let's move on to the running back position. Yeah, people are liking the revenge narrative. Bengals going to slap him, says Brian. Yeah, I mean, that could go that way too. It could go really bad for him, which is why I think Justin Fields has the same sort of position as Trey Lance does, where they're going to bring Fields in specific instances like they did last night, possibly more towards the goal line to get them just up to speed and things like that, and make give the defense a different look. All right, let's move on to running backs. We have Christian McCaffrey, who I noticed has actually gone down in price. We talked about him a little bit to start off the show. We have Devon Cook up against Arizona at 9,200. That defense looked pretty good yesterday. Stop Derrick Henry and stop what the entire plan for the Tennessee Titans. You have Alvin Kamara against the Carolina Panthers, a team that we have targeted a lot in the past couple years with their run defense. Nick Chubb against Houston seems like the obvious cash game smash spot. You also have Derrick Henry against Seattle. That's an interesting spot too. I'm interested to see what Tennessee does to bounce back this week, but I think people lean 100% towards Chubb. We saw Joe Mixon have 30 touches the other day. He gets Chicago's defense, who was ran over last night. So yeah, what are the guys? And Zeke and David Montgomery are down here too. David Montgomery, another guy that we can talk about. He looked very solid last night against that really good defense. So anybody in this first area and this higher priced range stick out to you besides the Mr. Chubb?
Oh, besides the Mr. Chubb, that was all I was prepared to talk about.
Yeah, well, I'll
I
talk
was
about
so
it. Go ahead.
excited. Yeah, I love the Chubb spot. I think at 8,400, this is a misprice, honestly. This is a guy who, even over just a few rushing attempts, ended up absolutely decimating the Chiefs yesterday. So I really like what I saw from him. He had those 2 touchdowns. This Browns team proves why they have one of, if not the best O line in the league. It's because they're able to push around basically any team, and I think
Yep.
Houston would be no different. So I think Chubb is in line for a monster game, but I also think other guys are in line for good games too. Here, I think the fact that Joe Mixon got so many touches and he's still under 8K is impressive. Like you said, we saw 33 touches as a whole with 4 targets too. So like looked really good in week one,
Yep.
right? I like the Joe Mixon spot. I like the Austin Eckler spot. You get him at 7K. I think this is a good price tag. I don't want to get too far out of this upper range of running backs, but I see a lot of guys that can be pivots off of Chubb as well. Derrick Henry, I'm sure he's a pivot off of Chubb. There's just a lot of good options in this range, in my opinion.
There are. Obviously, the one that sticks out to the most is Chubb. It's probably going to be a double running back pay up week, from what I can tell. Again, we'll have to look at the wide receivers and their matchups, but right off the bat, it sounds like we're paying up at running back, whereas last week we were not as much. So let's move on here. The chat wants us to talk about David Montgomery against Cincinnati, and I agree with them. He did touch the ball 16 times on the ground, got 1 target in the air in the passing game, and I think a lot of that has to do with just this, the stagnant offense that they had. But the 16 rushing attempts for 100 yards against the Rams defense is very impressive. I like that they used him in the goal line as well. That was always kind of a concern. just with all the options that they have. So yeah, talk to me about David Montgomery. I think that he's in a very good spot. I would say he's in the cash game player pool for sure.
Yeah, definitely in the cash game player pool. We saw Cook was it was a tough matchup for Cook, but I blame that more on just the offense not having a very good day. David Montgomery had impressive running, and more importantly, impressive running against the Rams. I mean, a defense that is really good, has a really
Yep.
talented front seven, and he still was able to have more than 5 yards per carry. So, and got that touchdown in too. I wish I saw more out of the receiving game for him. I wish I
Yeah,
saw
me too.
more than one target. Maybe we see that this week, or maybe we see that later in the year. But the workload looked good. I I don't know. Is 17 touches not enough for you at 7,300? Do you wish he had more?
That's kind of my concern right now. The passing game should be there for him, but again, they have guys that are. I'm not talking about Tariq Cohen. I'm talking about, you know, and there's 3 or 4 guys that could take stuff from him, as well as the fact that they just have tight ends that are. They have 2 tight ends that one's more athletic than the other, obviously, but yeah, I think that they're. I'm not worried about it yet. I would say that would be an overreaction on my part if I was worried about the pass game for David Montgomery. Um, but we'll see. I think it all has to do with who's at quarterback, right? So let's move on here. The last thing I'll say in this range is that Zeke is at 7,500. Not necessarily the spot that I would love to target him in, but I do think that this is probably a pace up and potentially could be a shootout game against the Chargers. So don't bail on Zeke just yet, fantasy owners. I think you'll be. I know we went over their schedule and it's really bad from that aspect, but don't throw away Zeke yet in tournaments. So I think that we can move on here after
Nope.
that. Jonathan Taylor,
For
not a good matchup. He rushed the ball 17 times. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I think that we were a little bit down on him in that first matchup, just because we didn't know what was gonna happen with Marlon Mack and Naeem Hines after being paid last week. But again, do we overreact here? Obviously, if you have 7,200 and you get 14 FanDuel points, it's like just making value. I saw a lot in the receiving game that I like a lot because they used him instead of Naeem Hines out of for those 7 targets. So I saw that and I was encouraged. I saw the rushing attempts and I was encouraged. But he's 1 touchdown away from smashing his price tag. But is this enough for you?
No, not at all. And here's the thing at the end of the day, yeah, encouraging that we see him get 17 rush attempts and 7 targets, but Naeem Hines got more targets, which is it's kind of insane to see how many targets they're giving their running backs. But Naeem Hines got 8 targets, and Naeem Hines still took 9 rushing attempts as well. So we're still seeing a lot of work from Naeem Hines, even though we did see a good amount of touches for Jonathan Taylor. I'm certainly not on him in this matchup, but I think that I don't know, man. I don't think this is a spot that I can go to still, even if it was a decent matchup, just because I think these other running backs are going to start getting touches. And I think Mack isn't going to be just sitting on the bench for the whole season. He's going to have that opportunity to get touches at some point as well. It's just a matter of when. And when you have a 3-man split backfield, it scares me a little bit.
Right. I 100% agree. Let's move on. Talk about these guys in the 7K range. You have Austin Eckler against Dallas. I think that opponent ranking actually is wrong. There's still this isn't these opponent rankings and defensive rankings on FanDuel aren't going to actually be accurate until maybe week 6 or 7 in the season until we know more. The one thing that stands out is that he did have 15 rushing attempts, but the other thing is that he didn't have any work in the pass game. I think this is an overreaction. I think people are going to flip out and say, "Hey, what's going on here?" This should be fine. I like his price tag a lot. I think that Austin Eckler is a fine play in tournaments. I don't know if he makes the cash game player pool, but he's certainly in play from the GPP side of things. Chris Carson, same boat actually as Eckler. We'll talk about I think that the wide receivers for Seattle, I have a lot more interest in. And then we'll see what happens with Jacob. I know he's questionable tonight. We'll talk about that, but he's at 6,500 against Pittsburgh. No, thank you. Henderson, though, against the Colts, Josh. I know. So from what I saw yesterday, I was a little bit worried with Sony Michel coming into the game, but I also knew that they wanted to run the ball against the Bears. They did a pretty good job of doing that. He did get 17 overall touches. The only the concern is that if he doesn't get the rushing touchdown, he doesn't hit value. So what are you thinking? What's your takeaway from week 1 of the Rams running back situation?
I think it was more just the fact of trying to stay away from that Chicago front seven, right? I mean, Henderson didn't even really get his work in until the last quarter, basically the last 6 minutes or last 10 minutes of the last quarter, because we saw throughout the first three quarters, he barely got any touches. I know you were kind of relying on him for the FanDuel single game lineup to get those touches. He was extremely low owned, and luckily the Rams were in a position to give him those touches late. I don't know what the situation will be for this Colts team, but that at least scares me a little bit that the only time he did get those touches were to close out the game. And it wasn't even necessarily a close game. It was more, I don't want to say garbage time because it technically wasn't garbage time, but it does feel a little bit like garbage time run for Henderson. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. For me, I'm off of the play. I think you have a few guys down here that are completely getting overreacted to, and I'm excited to talk about them and then move on to wide receiver.
Sure, let's do it. Let's go down in this 6K range where the juicy stuff was in week 1. Let's see here, because I know we're going to be talking about these San Francisco running backs here in a second. Damien Harris, Josh, had a little bit of a tweak issue, a little bit of a exhaustion issue against the Dolphins the other day, but he did get 23 attempts, which was really good to see. I know that the fumble was kind of caused by the fact that they were using him so much. So do you think people overreact to that and maybe are a little bit more on Damien Harris than they should be? Or do you think this is kind of what we saw coming? And do you think that you can play him against the Jets?
I think you can play him against the Jets. I think people will overreact about the fumble and get a little bit worried about Belichick putting him in the doghouse. But like you said, it was an exhaustion issue. I think that Belichick, at the end of the day, the fact that this is going to be the first time in my recent memory that we've seen a lead running back for the Patriots outpace just everyone else by a mile. I mean, he had 23 touches, right? I think Ramondre Stevenson had 3 touches and James White had 3 touches. So, like, at the end of or rushing attempts, not touches as a whole, rushing attempts. The fact that he outpaced them by that much just shows that Damien Harris is the true RB1 in New England, and he will take over that role as the guy with a big share of the rushing attempts. I like it. I think I'm willing to do it. I think people are overreacting because all the headlines are just he had that fumble late, and everyone's thinking that he's going to get put in the doghouse. I'm not sure yet, though. And I got to remember Stevenson also fumbled early on in the game. So, like, I don't know if Belichick has a lot of options to go to in the running back system. So that's why I think Damien Harris is still completely in play. And I like him against his Jets team.
I can get behind it, too. Brian from the chat says, you don't think James White eats like CMC did receiving. I think they're two totally different players and 2 totally different offenses. We also know that the quarterback for this New England team, Mack Jones, I mean, he looked really good yesterday, but I don't think it's necessarily the same connection to, it's not a Tom Brady or James White situation. So for me, I think that the team relies on this run game, and it's going to be behind Damien Harris. And we could see Ramondre Stevenson get a couple more touches as he gets used to the flow in the NFL. So let's talk about another Harris here before we get to the Niners. Naji Harris, debut game. We mentioned on the morning stream that he looked slow. He looked kind of scared in the goal line situations. He does face, obviously this was a tougher matchup than he's going to get in week 2. But 16 attempts, 3 targets, 1 reception. I mean, I wish they used him more in the passing game, but honestly, I'm a little bit shocked. But I think people overreact to Naji Harris this week. I think he's fully in play, and you're going to see that. So there are 2 things on this. One, you're going to see a lot of people be encouraged about Pittsburgh's running back decision once Baltimore absolutely torches them on the ground tonight. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is people are probably going to get scared about his box score situation from last week. And I think that this is probably the floor spot for Naji Harris in terms of expectations heading into week 2.
Yeah, this is another one of those spots where I think people overreact. Like you said, I think people start to get off the Naji Harris train. And I think it's completely the wrong move. We still saw a decent workload from him, even in a really tough scenario where this Pittsburgh team was behind for a majority of the game and they really couldn't run the ball. This is a game against Las Vegas where they should be able to run the ball plenty. So I like the Naji Harris price tag a lot at 6,100. He still got the majority of the snaps at running back. And I think if they do get ahead big in that game, you're going to see him used quite a bit. So I think Najee Harris just needs that time to adjust to the NFL level. Hopefully one game was enough to at least take a step of improvement compared to what him looking slow yesterday. And I really like it. Jared, I really need to talk about Raheem Mostert. I don't think I can wait any
Go
longer
ahead.
just because we just got the news that he is going to be out for 8 weeks due to a knee cartilage injury. We can scroll down a little bit more because you have Elijah Mitchell at 6,000 or 5,800. If he's going to be the lead back here, he looked really good against the Lions. I think it's easy to look good against the Lions, but I mean, if he's going to be the number one back for San Fran, how can you ignore it, right? At 5,800.
Yep. The reason that we target Niners backs all the time is because we know that if we get the right one, that guy's going to go off and have a fantastic fantasy output. Now, we thought that guy yesterday was Raheem Mostert. Looked like it was. The industry knew that it was coming. Not all of them, but a lot of them did. And then when we got the news that Trey Sermon was a healthy scratch, that was the key and ticket for me. And I thought that Mostert had, the best running back spot on the board yesterday. Unfortunately, with him, he's injury prone. That wasn't enough to take me off of him. That shouldn't be a reason. But yesterday he got hurt. So now, obviously, the main thing to watch here, and this is not an overreaction, but the main thing to watch moving forward is why Trey Sermon was with a healthy scratch. And then do you think? So let's say Trey Sermon's in, and he's healthy, and the coaches let him play. Do you think it's still Mitchell's backfield?
I think it is. Shanahan said yesterday that, look, these were the 3 running backs that we were going to go with regardless, and he felt really good about that 3-man running back system. And that 3-man running back system, for those who don't know, it was Mostert, Hasty, and Elijah Mitchell. Sorry, I had to cough there. But they're going to add Trey Sermon in, but I think he's honestly RB3. And so I think it is still Elijah Mitchell's backfield. It was a healthy scratch. It wasn't because of an injury or anything like it might have been with Ayuk. It was just a healthy scratch. They wanted to go with 3 other guys. And so for that reason, I think it's still Elijah Mitchell's backfield, even though I would suspect that Trey Sermon is going to be active game day.
Definitely, 100% agree. This would be the if we get the Sermon news, and even if we don't, I think that Eli is definitely in play for cash. Probably one of the best plays under 6K. Let's just scroll through this because I know we got to roll through the rest of this build here. So let me get off of this single game, and then we can focus on guys under 6K. You have Edmonds against Minnesota, we talked about. You have this Melvin Gordon / Javonte Williams play against Jacksonville. That's interesting. You also have the 3-headed backs of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against Atlanta. Anything stand out to you? And then you also have Kareem Hunt at 57 against Houston. So do you like any of these guys, or is it clearly the running back for Eli Mitchell?
I think it's clearly the running back for Mitchell as of right now. I don't know if I would touch anywhere else here. I think that Leonard Fournette could be an interesting play if we do feel a little bit better about him coming into week 2, just because I do think that Tampa Bay will be up by quite a bit against this Atlanta team. And we saw that Sanders and Gainwell were able to absolutely rip apart that Falcons team as well. Outside of that, though, I don't find a lot that I'm interested in down here. I mean, I don't think you can go back to the James Robinson front. I don't really want to attack the Arizona backs. I don't really want to deal with the Denver split because it was pretty much split right down the middle between the 2 backs. We saw Melvin Gordon ended up getting 14 touches. I think Javonte Williams ended up getting 15 touches as a whole. It's just hard to predict anything down here. So I think I'm going to stay away from anyone this low.
Yeah, a lot of these guys are tournament plays. The clear cash game play is going to be Eli Mitchell, as well as a Nick Chubb, as well as maybe one of these other guys here, David Montgomery, somebody like that. So let's move on. Let's talk about wide receiver. And obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is up at the top. Main thing surrounding that is because the Chiefs and the Packers are not on this week 2 slate. They have primetime games this weekend. So DeAndre Hopkins against Minnesota seems like a prime pay-up option. The rest of these guys are in that situation outside of Ridley, where there's other guys on their team that are going to take targets. So the main one that I get excited about and pops first look here, DeAndre Hopkins for me is up top. And I think, Josh, I was on Calvin Ridley all season. I think there's still no time, or we shouldn't be overreacting to Calvin Ridley just yet, because I think that there's still plenty of work there, as that team's going to be trailing a lot. But I think this is a complete fade spot for me against Tampa.
See, you say that. I think this is a complete go-to spot. I think this
Okay.
is a really sharp GPP play, in all honesty. The whole talk about Tampa last week was the fact that, hey, we saw that secondary torched. I don't know if that secondary gets any better. It's going to be interesting to see the practice reports. Are
Yeah,
they going to get back Whitehead?
they
Are
are
they going to
very
get back
hurt.
some of the core? Are they going to get back some of the corners that they lost that game? If they are still hurt, Calvin Ridley seems like almost a go-to spot. It seems like a replica of what Amari Cooper got here. It should be kind of close to the same workload, and I don't think we should be overreacting to this Atlanta defense. We know that Matt Ryan is a good QB when he's able to stay in the pocket, and we know that Calvin Ridley can be an absolute beast on the field. So Atlanta's going to have to score points somehow against Tampa Bay. They're going to have to throw the ball a ton. I think that Calvin Ridley could be your GPP option, and at a great price tag of 7,700.
Okay. Yeah, the one thing I will say is that comparing that offense to the Dallas offense is not, I don't agree with that, but I completely understand from a DFS perspective. Again, I'm not going to try to overreact to Calvin Ridley just yet. I think that I think that last week was a floor game for him. Yeah, we just got the news, and I'll just break it here, and then we can talk about it here in a little bit. Thank you guys for coming to hang out. We're talking week 2 right now, first look, but we're going to be covering the Monday Night Football game later. Josh, we got the news that Josh Jacobs is not going to be playing tonight. So smash that Ravens -4, which I'm sure is probably off the board now. But when that goes back up, we'll make sure to discuss that and talk about that game with you guys. So initial
Wait, wait,
reaction to
wait.
that.
I think he is playing tonight.
Okay, so was it a COVID related issue?
No, it was a non-COVID illness.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Oh yeah,
Rappaport
that's right. All right.
said, yeah, is trending towards playing tonight. Should be good to go.
Okay, well that's very scary then. I mean, is he good? Like, is he actually healthy?
Yeah,
Who knows? So we'll cover that for you guys here in about 15 minutes or so. So make sure to tune in and stay on for that, because that's probably the most important thing to happen tonight with all the running backs in that game. So let's move on here. Let's talk about this 7K range. Let's see. Thielen's price went up because of that performance yesterday. We see Stephon Diggs here against Miami, tough spot. Keenan Allen against Dallas seems like a prime candidate for some action here. I love this Chargers passing attack. Let's see. Justin Jefferson, Josh, fell below Thielen. I think that's probably a little bit of an overreaction on their part. Let's see. Tyler Lockett, massive game against Tennessee. This could be another spot again. We talked about the double stack scenario of Metcalf and Lockett. You now have Metcalf at 7K, Lockett at 7.2. Seems like a really, really good opportunity to double stack once again.
I agree. Good price tags on both of these guys, in all honesty, putting them at the 7K range. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I think a little bit of an overreaction is this target share. He was very efficient with his touches. I know that he connected on 2 long bombs. You're probably not going to see this type of success. I do think that regresses a little bit, but I think that I actually would be targeting DK Metcalf in this spot because of the fact that he's a little bit cheaper. So let's move down here. Allen Robinson against the Bengals, I think, is a prime candidate. Again, I don't really know if I trust his quarterback, but that's interesting. We have a pretty big discrepancy in price, and I'm scrolling down because I'm trying to find this dude, and maybe I passed him. Oh, nope, he's down here. Julio Jones at 6,300, Josh, and we have A.J. Brown at 71 against Seattle. Seems like a prime options for runbacks against the Seattle Seahawks, but does Tennessee get things going again?
I mean, like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm not sure if I'm willing to trust this Tennessee offense yet. So like, I'm on the stay away spot. I thought you were scrolling down for someone else, because I had to scroll down for him when I first started looking at the prices at this wide receiver range. My boy, I'm surprised you haven't talked about him yet. Antonio Brown at
Yeah.
6,400. Like, if we're gonna attack this spot against Atlanta, let's attack this spot against Atlanta, and let's trust in the guy that Bruce Arians says has looked the best he has in the past 5 years, and
Yep.
certainly showed us that he looked the best that he has in the past 5 years when they played on Thursday last week. So I really like AB at this $6,400 price tag. I think it's a juicy spot. It's a spot where Tampa should be. I don't know how much they'll throw the ball, but I think they will be in a good spot to score. And we just saw Devontae Smith light up that defense. We also saw Rager and Watkins also look pretty good for the Philly team. I really like what AB can do this week.
Yep, 100% agree. Things that stick out. I mean, Corey Davis is in a tough matchup now, but he scored 2 touchdowns. That passing attack came back in the second half, looked pretty good for the Jets. But again, probably not a spot I want to target for cash games. I'm interested in these Rams price tags because we do have to talk about that. All of the receivers scored touchdowns yesterday. the ones that we care about at least, and even Van Jefferson scored a touchdown. So I'm interested to see how that goes. They got I think a very good spot against the Colts secondary, who got absolutely torched yesterday. KB Pitt says lock AB in. 100% agree with that. I mean, not locking him in on Monday, but I feel like he's a very, very solid cash game play. So Robert Woods 6,500 and Cooper Kupp 6,200. Both of these guys looked very good the other day. I think Cooper Kupp is going to be used in that same safety blanket role that he was when Jared Goff was his quarterback. Cooper Kupp, Josh, 6,200 seems like one of the clear standout price tags.
Yeah, I like this Cooper Cup price tag. I think it's a really good price tag considering what we saw last night from him and how much Stafford likes to throw to him. I mean, 10 targets at this price range against this defense, where I don't know what Indy secondary is really going to look like, but it didn't look good yesterday. I like the Cup play. I think it is a solid play.
Yep, I agree. It's one of the guys I'm definitely circling moving forward. The 10 targets is very, very encouraging. All right, let's move down the list here. Got a couple big bump ups. Marvin Jones specifically, he's in this price range now. T Higgins against Chicago is interesting. I'm not sure he makes that cash game. He also did leave the game after getting hurt after scoring that touchdown. Yeah, Kai says, "Where's Jawan?" We'll get to Jawan here. I got to find out where he is. Let's see. Interesting matchup for him if they decide to do that. Let's see. Moving down the list, it looks, Josh, like it's the complete opposite of last week where there's just not very many value guys down here. We do have Tyler Boyd at 57, Devontae Smith after catching a touchdown, 56 against San Francisco. Mike Williams is interesting at 5,600 as a tournament flyer. What are you seeing down here?
Yeah, I like the Devonte Smith price tag at 5,600. Like you just said, I think, like I said before, that secondary is going to get torched. I like the Mike Williams play too. We saw him look really good even in a tough matchup yesterday, and saw him targeted, I think, more so than even Keenan Allen was targeted, which is shocking to realize. But if that's the case, then I could definitely see you playing Mike Williams at this price tag, and then going further down the lineup, or further down into the wide receiver range. I don't know what to think about this Denver team because we did get the news recently that Jerry Jeudy is going to be out for 6 weeks due to that high ankle sprain. And you have KJ Hamler here at 5,500. You also have Tim Patrick at 5,400, and they're both against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So you would expect one of them to do well. Are you willing to take a shot on one of these guys?
I think those guys are more GPP centric for me. We did pass over a couple guys that we need to circle back on. One of them being Cortland Sutton, who actually is the same price tag as Cooper Kupp. So I think you can honestly play both of these guys in a first look build. And I think we're going to end up doing that. But yeah, Cortland Sutton for me is definitely in play. Yeah, I mean that Judy injury is going to affect a lot for this team moving forward. I know that there was only 3 targets last week, but I think that any of these Denver Broncos players are going to be in consideration because of how bad that Jacksonville defense is. Now I know we have a few things from the chat here. Yeah, how is Cup so low priced? Don't know. That was a mistake. Obviously, pricing came out before the Sunday Night Football game, so that makes complete sense to me. And then John wants to know. We didn't touch on the Dallas receivers too much, but yeah, the Michael Gallup injury is interesting. We're going to need to monitor that moving forward. So CD Lamb and Amari Cooper are definitely not off the board for me. They'll be people we monitor, but 6,800 against the Chargers is interesting. I'll just say that. So moving
Yeah.
forward, I think we should just talk about any of these punts. Christian Kirk, probably an overreaction while they figure out the wide receiver 2 spot. Rondale Moore looked pretty good too, so we'll see how that goes. Marquez Callaway, complete chalk bust yesterday, 5,700. I played him on DraftKings and he let me down tremendously, but thankfully was still able to cash over there. On FanDuel, I got off of him late to swap when I heard the Raheem Mostert news, but he did get Jair Island yesterday, even as bad as the Packers were on defense. This play still worked out. And you saw Jawan Johnson, who I'll look for now in the player pool, come up and be an absolute beast. So he's 5,100. Josh, this could be a great segue here because they actually put him at tight end on FanDuel.
Yeah, I saw that. Thank goodness, because that is his position. He is a tight end. He's a wide receiver turned into a tight end. I like the Jawan Johnson price tag, especially if they're going to target him that much in the red zone. It makes sense to target him that much in the red zone. I like the Jawan Johnson that price tag, especially because I don't know how I feel about Kittle. I might be an overreaction about this Philly defense, but they did pretty well against Pitts. I know Kittle and Pitts completely different guys, but I do think that that's something to consider. I don't know if I can consider Darren Waller against Pittsburgh. I think that's going to be a really tough matchup for him.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Darren Waller tonight. I think he's going to do well, although I think that it is another tough matchup for the Las Vegas Raiders. Darren Waller sitting at 7K here. He might be a fade for me just in first look passing. Obviously, in tournaments, I think he's just fine too, but it'll be interesting to see because they're going to be very close matchups tonight versus what we're talking about right now in week 2. All right, George Kittle at 6,700. I think the main concern for us here is just the amount of work that he's going to get. 5 targets, 78. It's not like it wasn't the worst thing, but it wasn't the best thing either. And you want more from him at this price tag. So, any interest in Kittle, or is it still a situation where we're staying away until we see that quarterback change?
I think I could have a little bit of interest in Kittle. I don't think it's a bad play necessarily. I don't know. I'll have to do a little bit of digging and see what Philly did, and I want to watch some tape on that Philly game some more. But I think Kittle could potentially be in play, even with a lower target share. He just has to get into the red zone or the end zone once, and he pays it off. So especially with him getting or having 78 receiving yards, so I think it's an interesting price tag at 6-7 and something I'm considering on the slate.
Yeah, the first look for me is that tight end this week is really gross because you don't have the top. Well, you have 2 of the top guys, but they're just not in a good spot or doesn't have enough work. And so you move down the list here, and with no Kelsey and no Mark Andrews, it's kind of like, okay, now we're relying on Dallas Goedert. Gronk is 5,800. Don't know the last time Gronk was 5,800 on any slate. People are going to chase this spot, and I think that's a mistake. So we'll talk about Gronk a lot this week, but I still stand and I will die on this hill that he is a terrible play until week 15 and moving forward. All right.
Yep.
Noah Fant is interesting. Again, with Jerry Jeudy down, this could be a spot that you target him in. 8 targets against New York is good. I'm glad that we saw this production from him because I do think that I can trust him moving forward with one less receiver in the mix. So I'd like this spot for Fant. He's actually the first guy in this list that actually makes sense for me for cash games. Moving down the list, we see Tyler Higby, part of that Rams stack. That hair freaks me out. He's 558 yesterday, so definitely interesting there. All right. Sean coming through again, watching on his iPad. Appreciate you, sir. Gifting to Skurana, Big Joe, DFS Bento Box, Damore, and Black Mamba. Yep, gift bomb. Yo, yo, yo. What's up, guys? We're going to be talking Monday Night Football here in about 5 minutes or less, so make sure to stick around and we'll make sure to break that game down for you here on FanDuel. Yep, Sean dropping bombs. You love it. All right, Josh. Kyle Pitts disappointed everybody yesterday. All 3 of us played him. Do you have any thoughts for Kyle Pitts, and was that an overreaction?
I don't think it's an overreaction. I think, well, maybe it is an overreaction, but against Tampa Bay, I don't know if I can get behind it. He's going to have to deal with an incredibly talented linebacking crew at Tampa Bay. I'm probably off of the Pitts play this week. I'll take a wait-and-see approach for Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I like the targets. I like 8 targets. They just didn't really do much with the targets, so, and they just didn't have any red zone drives like at all outside of the first half, like once or twice. So, all right, moving down the list here, I think we'll probably wrap this segment up and position up and move on. Austin Hooper, interesting play against Houston as well, but that's pretty much it for me for this first look. Yeah, pretty much it. All right, let's talk about the defense here. Scroll really quickly through it, and then we'll talk some Monday Night Football. New England up the top at 5K, Niners at 4.8, Steelers 4.9. The one that I wanted to see really bad was Denver, so 4,600 there. Tampa, 45. What sticks out to you here? Do you think it's going to be a week where we pay all the way down like we did last week, or kind of stick up in this top range?
I don't know if we need to pay all the way down. I mean, I guess you could potentially pay all the way down. It's always a way to get more exposure to, or not more exposure. Well, yeah, I guess more exposure to higher price plays is to pay all the way down here. But you're looking for that Denver Broncos-esque play in this defensive range. And honestly, Cleveland Browns are really sticking out to me. I understand why they put them at 4,200. They did have a tough time against KC, but the Chiefs are the Chiefs, right? It's Patrick
Right.
Mahomes, Mr. September himself. Now he gets to face off against Tyrod Taylor. Like, I think this Cleveland Browns team will be immensely better here against Houston.
100% agree with that. Yeah, I mean, that one sticks out like a sore thumb. The Tampa one does as well. And then, a lot of these defenses up top are in really good plays. So, John says New England's going to be hard to fade, especially with Becton out. Yeah, Mekhi Becton's going to be out for, I think, what did it say, 6 weeks? Something like that. So
Yep.
he's out for a long time. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that the lowest I would go at the moment, just looking first look, is Cleveland Browns. So I'll make sure to look back at that later in the week when I'm writing the article and rewatch this video so I can remind myself to put them down. All right, Josh. Anything else just overall that stands out to you about this slate? I think it's a really good one. I think last week, week one was definitely like there was a bunch of tournament stack options. This one seems like a little bit less of that situation and more of a cash centered type of approach.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I haven't done my research for it. This is literally the first look that I'm doing with you guys. So maybe things pop out as we move on throughout the day or throughout the week and I start doing more research. But I will say one more defense that I do really like, and it'll be interesting to watch them on Monday Night Football to see if maybe they have any potential. But the Raiders against Pittsburgh, I mean, if Pittsburgh is going to have that bad defensive line, and we saw what that Pittsburgh defense was able to do, they had a touchdown. They also had 4 forced fumbles. If the Raiders even have a semblance of decent defense tonight, I could see myself very easily going to the Raiders at 3,400 and feeling really good about it.